our Almighty God, Creator of heaven and earth, Father and lover of our soul. You sit on your throne of mercy and rule with your love and faithfulness. You are full of grace. We acknowledge your presence in our lives. Nothing is hidden in your eyes, even our challenges and struggles in life. We come to you with faith. We ask not only for our daily spiritual bread, but to seek your forgiveness and undeserving favor to heal our land, our family members, our friends and neighbors, even our enemies with COVID-19 and other diseases. Holy Spirit, help us to deepen our faith and see the opportunity to believe, obey, and worship. As we face this pandemic, you are Lord and God. Encourage us and change our hearts, not to fear, but to be full of hope and find ourselves praying and meditating your word. We believe no works of the enemy prosper to your children. Abba, Father, we believe that your Son Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. He is the truth and our salvation. Hear our prayers, O Lord, and most of all, not our will, but thy will be done. We pray this in Jesus' name, the name above all names, who was and is to come. Amen.
Naghahatid saya sa mga Pinoy, mga kanta at programang Tatak Pinoy. Napapanood at napapakinggan kahit saan ka man. Streaming worldwide. In South Manila, this is V81 Radio.
Malayo ka man sa iyong pamilya, dito ay hindi ka nag-iisa. Tiyak ito'y iyong hahanap-hanapin, dahil ito ang nagpapasaya sa atin. Ito ang radio ko, V81 Radio, V81 Radio. Dahil mahal namin kayo, V81 Radio, V81 Radio. Para sa inyo ito, V81 Radio. Ito ang paborito ng bawat Pilipino. Basta all hits, all Pinoy, panalo. Merong kwentong iyakan at tawanan, kahit nasaan ka man ito'y mapapakinggan. Oh, V81 Radio, V81 Radio. Ito ang radio mo, ito ang radio ko. Dahil mahal namin kayo, V81 Radio, V81 Radio.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the program anchors and producers and do not necessarily reflect the policies and position of this station. Discover the best-kept secrets in metaphysics, law of attraction, science, and spirituality, and listen to practical mystics from around the world. Let's open Pandora's box with Reverend Reg Stan, your metaphysical minister, here in Practical Magic, your practical mystic source, only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Satnam, everyone. I am Reverend Reg, and today is January 31, 2021, and it's it's a few minutes past 8 p.m. here in Manila, Philippines. And today, I'm so excited to share with everyone because we keep talking about metaphysics and its practical value, and we also talk about personal transformation, and we know that those topics are not exactly easy to demonstrate. So, I mean, transformation is not easy. So, today, I'm very happy to share with everyone that someone really took the time to work on herself and to make personal transformation for herself in such a way that empowered her and at the same time benefited the rest of her family members. But before I proceed, let me just invite everyone to affirm a simple statement with me. So, please close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and out, and put your right palm on your heart. Feeling as if our breaths are coming from the heart. And together, let's affirm I love myself for all that I was, all that I am, and all that I want to become. I am worthy because God made me so. And feel that sink in every cell of your body, in every organ, and every aspect of your life. And let's chant Satnam 3 times, one for ourselves, the next one for someone we are praying for, and the third for the Philippines and the rest of our global village. Satnam. 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 You may gently open your eyes. Satnam, everyone. So today, let me introduce to you our guest. Her name is Reverend Sheila Tillich, who is a universal master energy healer, licensed heart math coach, mentor, and top IET master instructor, founder for the Center of Being Incorporated, a unity field healing practitioner, international authorized host for the Lemurian Sisterhood, and galactic channeler healer. As a universal master energy healer, Sheila helps people awaken and align with their true self so they can live the life they were made for. She helps them find their true purpose, and she also helps them remove blocks in their energy field, balance their chakras, and cleanse them as well. She also helps people uncover limiting belief patterns, teach techniques for building personal resilience against stress, and guide people to move forward on their personal spiritual empowerment path. She also helps people unravel personal questions like who are you, why are you here, where are you going, and what is your life purpose. So, without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Reverend Sheila.
Thank you. Thank
Good
you for
morning.
having me.
Of course, we're so delighted to have you, Reverend Sheila. Especially, I know that you have so much to share to our Filipino audience and the rest of our global village, the rest of our viewers from around the globe. So, how's the weather in your place today?
Cold, snowy.
Awesome. So, what time is it exactly in your area now?
It's 7:08 in the morning a.m.
Oh, wow. So, thank you for. Are you an early riser?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Awesome, fantastic. So, this is just amazing that you can actually grace the show. So, anyway, Reverend Sheila, here in the Philippines, people are just beginning to become aware about what metaphysics is and what is its practical value in our lives. So, I want to ask you first, what is metaphysics for you?
Metaphysics is a different perspective, is how I look inside and find the divineness inside me. And how do I live this in for my soul's purpose? What does this mean for me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you for that, Reverend Sheila. There are so many people when you talk about the divine within and also realizing that divine in other people. I noticed that there's a big audience who aren't really comfortable acknowledging that divine presence within them.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it's because of many years of conditioning that the divine or the creator is outside of us. What can you say about it? Especially you have such an amazing work experience. And normally in healing, I notice that a lot of people who are religious conservatives, they tend to shy away when you talk about the divine presence within and realizing the soul's purpose. What can you say about it?
Well, a lot of times it has to do with, what has happened in their lives, their programming and the way that they were brought up. I was brought up in the Christian faith, and
Mm,
I always felt the presence of God in my life. And also I could feel the presence of angels around me. So I'm called the angel lady also. But,
fantastic.
yeah, but as time went on, I realized that there was more to it, and that God was working in me and through me. And that was my purpose, is to help others find that connection, whatever they call God, their higher self, their higher being, but that we aren't alone and that we
Yeah.
are fine. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila, especially the talk about the angels. I realized that when I talk to people of various religious groups, it's a lot easier for people to relate to angels.
Yes.
It feels like it's a more universal energy with the realm of the angels.
Yeah.
And I just feel that when it's the topic, it feels like it brings people together. And since I know you do a lot of healing and energy work, can you please about angels and how come most of us we feel that we resonate better with
You're chopping up.
yeah
You
uh,
froze. I didn't hear the last thing that you said. Sorry.
yeah that's fine because I just noticed that when it comes to group discussions and metaphysical discussions about angels, I noticed that regardless of religious background, people tend to commune in that topic. They tend to be more united discussing angels compared to discussing certain religious masters
Yeah.
or teachers. I'm not sure if you encountered that in your sessions, but for me, I noticed that it's the case.
Right. I think it starts in childhood, of somebody watching over you, and that belief that we're not alone. And, we go through a time in our life where we don't know. We really don't know. And what we do is go back to our childhood and this safety of having something wrap their arms around us, just like a loving, protective mother. And I think that's why angels are really accepted by all different ethnic groups, that angels are real, and it's the presence. And remember, when we're children, we have a more of an open mind than as adults. So kind of children resonates with everybody.
Yeah, fantastic. And Reverend Sheila, I'm not sure if you've heard of this prayer, but I'm just gonna share it with you because when I was a little kid, it was one of the first prayers taught to me. It's Angel of God by Guardian Dear, to whom God's love commits me here ever this day. Be at my side to light and guide, to rule and guard. Amen. So not sure if you're familiar with that prayer, but in my
No.
growing up years and in most Catholic schools here in the Philippines, it's a prayer that's been taught to most of us.
Yeah, I just remember, "Now lay me down to sleep." You know, bless the Lord, thy soul I keep. If I should die before I wake, that's prayer. That's what I remember as a child. But I also am hard of hearing, and as a child, so a lot of the words I didn't hear, but I
Mhm.
felt the energy of the angels, and I knew that they were around me, and I could communicate with them. So my childhood was very special in that way, that I felt their love for me. Um, Catholic schools was kind of hard for me in the beginning because I
Mhm.
always could communicate with angels, and I told them, and they told me I couldn't. I could have a guardian angel, but I couldn't talk with angels or have my own angels guardians, and so that kind of put a little squasher in my life. But I knew they were there, and I felt them, so that was the key.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm happy that you brought it up because so many people are actually looking to some higher being, higher power, someone that they can confide with, especially when the going gets tough. And we know that the power of prayer and meditation and simply having that spiritual connection to your concept of God or source is so important, especially nowadays. And personally, for me, Reverend Sheila, I think one of the reasons why I feel strongly about metaphysics, especially in the manner that you explained, that recognizing the divine within you is one of the ways that you put metaphysics as a foundation. So right now, Reverend Sheila, because I've gotten used to being able to communicate with that higher power or that particular angels whenever I have something to discuss, whether it's a simple matter or something that's really troubling me. So I realized that my relationship with that higher power is something that evolved over time. And given the given your background that I read earlier, it must have been such an amazing evolutionary process understanding that divine presence within you and everywhere around you. So, can you please share with us more how your belief about the divine energy evolved in your life?
Absolutely, I would love to. I would love to. Well, my childhood was not very comfortable. Let's put it that way. And the environment that I grew up in, with both my parents being alcoholics, was kind of crazy. But I always felt the presence that I was going to be okay. And now, as a wise woman, I see the love that my parents had, and I go to that whenever I need comfort. When I was a child, it wasn't comforting, but I always had the presence of my divine in me, the spiritual guidance that I was having with the angels. And over the years, I have developed this relationship in a powerful way. And it came from my childhood, from all the challenges that I had and all the obstacles that I had. It has made me who I am. And it's very powerful, my relationship with the angels and how it came about, whether it was from, growing up in the home that I had or in my marriage, who I tried to be somebody I wasn't to please somebody else. And also the things I realized that I wasn't happy. And then I had to actually take responsibility to change that. But I always felt the presence that I wasn't alone, that I was going to be okay. The problem was all the programs that I had inside, my low self-worth and self-confidence and my fear of changing. So that evolved as I stepped out of my fear and really trusted, what I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I had a spiritual connection and that they were with me and I wasn't alone.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And something that I want to ask you, for how long did you actually have that process of transformation?
Oh my,
Especially
especially what? Go ahead.
especially when we talk about if you're in an intimate relationship and you know that you're in this personal growth endeavor, we know that when you're in a relationship, it's not like everybody is immediately supportive of that intention. most
Absolutely.
most of the time, if you're desiring personal growth and your partner is already fixed in their mindset that how they met you is exactly how they want you to be for the rest of your life. And here you are wanting to change for your personal fulfillment. It's such a different energy that both of you are getting into. So, how long did it take for you to actually get into that space of being comfortable with the change?
Well, it's been evolving.
Mhm.
But the actual transformation started about 36 years ago. And
Wow.
that was a long time ago. However, it was ongoing many years before, but I didn't really face it. I ignored it. And
Mhm.
finally, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't ignore, what I knew inside that I wasn't happy and that I needed to do something about it. So I started recovery programs to looking at myself, looking
Mhm.
at my own anger inside, my own fears, my own resentments, and also my own, why did I do the things that I did? And then it was part of a forgiveness process that I had to go through. That it's like, okay, I'm not who I was yesterday, and I'm not who I'm gonna be tomorrow, but I'm okay just in today. So it started very early, taking one step at a time or one day at a time, as they say. And I started changing and evolving. And it's been an ongoing, I'd say the last 10 years have been the most profound because I was lined up just the way I was supposed to. When
Wow.
you talk about metaphysics or esoteric stuff, that's when a lot of this stuff comes into play, the mystical part,
Yeah.
So yeah. And then, kind of put two and two together and then you kind of understand it. What
Thank you
I'm
for sharing that,
doing.
Reverend Sheila. And I love that you talked about the last 10 years being the most profound
Yeah.
mystical experience for you to settle in that being of yours where you feel more expanded and more comfortable.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to what you said earlier. You knew back then that you weren't happy. And why is it important to be happy? Because apparently, we all come from a collective mindset where when you're already fixed and you've made a decision, even if you're not happy, for the sake of keeping your word, whatever that may be, hanging on to that particular commitment. And now I want to ask you personally, can you please tell us why is it so important to be happy?
Oh my
Because
God.
yeah.
That's the whole point of us being here, as
Mhm.
being happy. And so many in society aren't, and they don't know why, and I always knew I wasn't happy, but I knew I
Mhm.
was happy with my divineness inside that brought me joy and comfort. And that's kind of where it expanded upon. And it was phenomenal when I started growing and started changing and to tap into that. But joy is important because if you have joy in your heart, you just feel wonderful. You want to give it away,
Yeah.
and as they say, you got to give it away to keep it. So I wanted to keep that joy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to keep expanding and growing myself. So
Yeah.
joy is very important.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. Especially, we know for metaphysics that the more joyful you are, the more expanded you feel, and the more you come into alignment of who you really are. And it's a lot easier for us to be in a state where we manifest spiritual gifts that we're wanting, like that feeling of joy, and material gifts that we also want to experience in our lives. So, can you please talk more about the fringe benefits of just being joyful, because most of the time we've been conditioned that you have to work very hard
Yeah, yeah.
you
Well,
to get
you know, you
yeah.
know, there's so many people they can work hard, 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 but in the end, they still have to be with themselves. So
Mhm.
it's not about how hard you work, and it's about the simplicity of it. Keep it very simple. And start seeing the things that you're grateful for. Put your gratitude list out there. But there's so much more that we can do by just being in the attitude of gratitude, and that
Yeah.
brings you joy. And then we can step into woe is me, or not feeling comfortable with people around you, but stepping into that joy will bring you more comfort in the end.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And I want to add to what we're talking about now because we know that joy and pleasure is just natural part of our divine experience as spiritual beings having a human experience. But for most people, they feel that if you experience pleasure and joy, then you're experiencing the work of the opposite force.
Well, that has a lot to do with, our traditions, and what we were brought up with, our belief system. And a lot of it affects, of course, the way we were brought up. And our belief systems is big, especially traditions. In
Mhm,
my situation, being married Catholic,
mhm,
bringing my kids up Catholic, and I was a good Christian woman, you know,
mhm.
and I married for life. That was what I felt. And that's what my commitments were. However, life wasn't like that. It wasn't a divine marriage, and I knew it, and I wasn't happy. But I figured that I could change the other person,
Mhm.
instead of being who I was. And then things kind of came unraveled from there when I couldn't be who I was. And that's what made the unhappiness. So, yeah, it's traditions and the way you think you should be and act will stop you from moving
Mhm.
forward. And that's the way it was. It's like, you made your bed and now you got to sleep in it. That's the way it was. You made those decisions, and that's the way it's going to be. There's no changing. It's like that doesn't make any sense. Why would God want you to be unhappy when you can
Yeah.
be happy? Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And it seems to me before metaphysics, in the past, I would talk about being your authentic self as someone that was closely in remembrance of your patterns in the past.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we know from a metaphysical standpoint, being your true self is actually bringing out your full potential, which are two very, very different uh, things. And I'm very sure that you can explain it further, and our
You froze.
We'll be back shortly. This is Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila. Connected ka na ba para laging updated sa mga bagong shows, promos, trending news, viral videos, events, o patok na OPM hits? Just follow us on Facebook at V81 Radio Manila. Simple lang, itype lang ang letter V81 Radio Manila. O di ba madali lang? Kaya i-like at i-follow na. Want to see who will bring home the win? Get ready for Napalm Music Awards. Now back to Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
we were talking about defining our true selves, defining our authentic selves. Because apparently, if we don't look at things from a metaphysical perspective, we think of our true selves as someone that's hanging on to our patterns in the past. But when we talk about our authentic self, what we're actually talking about is that space, is that being of us that is moving towards the fulfillment of one's full potential. So you're really going to experience transformation over time. And apparently, for most people, transformation is a scary place And normally, if you transform, most people actually condemn you for it. So uh, I want to ask Reverend Sheila for her point of view because she's gone through 36 years of conscious. Apparently, Reverend has gone through 36 years of conscious transformation. And like what I was mentioning earlier, if you're trying to grow yourself, it's not easy to do. And most people actually condemn you unconsciously, not realizing that's really living out from your full potential.
Absolutely. It took strength and courage to go through what I went through, and it wasn't easy on my family at all. But I knew I needed to really stand in who I really was, and I needed to start living my life differently. And as I said, it took many years to get there. Tradition and other people's views, it's hard. It's hard on the family, it's hard on the people. But you need to make that decision, and base it on trust and faith and believe that there's something better for you. And that's why I always knew that I had a purpose, and what the way I was living was not my purpose. And yes, it might seem like I was hurting people or, not following, what everybody else expected me to do, but I knew my divine purpose was there and I needed to do something. So it was a transformation for everyone, and it wasn't easy at all. And it's still not easy sometimes, but it's joyful today, and everybody knows that it's balanced now. Things are a lot better than it was. And I know we froze.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And you were talking about purpose. And I also believe in the power of purpose. And it's not only use actually making it happen, but the purpose in itself, it's a seed planted in all of us, given by our divine creator. So you also have that seed inside of you. That's why you have strong emotions to go after it. So, but in the past, I was taught that if you have strong emotions for something, it wasn't really celebrated. It's more like people saying that it's your ego fueling your ambition, and you shouldn't really aspire for big things.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
how do you process it now, Reverend Sheila, especially when you're faced with other people that are not in total alignment with that kind of mentality?
Well, now I stand on my sacred truth, and I know who I am, and I do know that that's really where they're coming from and their belief system, and there's no judgment there at all, and sometimes you need to move on, and be in other relationships, because as they always say, you can't you can lead you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink, you know.
Yeah.
And they're not where you're at, and that's okay. And I truly believe, we come in here, we come into this life to learn lessons. And
Yes.
we were always taught, that you do this because this is what you're told to do, and this is how life is going to be. You get married, you have children, and then you retire, and then you die. It's like, wait a minute, there's so much more in between. And what happens is that people start to see, that they're not happy, and they start to take different paths. But what you're really finding is that that's really what your divine purpose is to live life and experience the big classroom of life with all different things, and many people are scared to do that because traditions, they haven't been taught differently, So, and when I meet people that are very stuck, that's what I know what I'm here to do, help them get unstuck. But it's when they're ready, their divine timing. You can't make somebody get unstuck. You can't make somebody drink the water. You can take them
Yeah.
there, but you can't make them drink it, and it's your own, divineness. You have to make that decision to do that. but you can be there to comfort them or support them, but you don't have to coddle them. You know, they
Yeah.
have to do it. You have to
Thank
take
you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. Especially, we know one of our first few lessons as metaphysical practitioners is to make you realize, make you aware that whether you like what's happening in your life or you don't like what's happening in your life, a big part of you actually caused that attraction. And for most people, because they don't want to take responsibility, especially if it's something negative, when you
exactly.
tell them when you tell them that they're accountable for what's happening to them, then they go into this pattern of blaming and complaining, especially when there are certain scenarios that are very, very limiting for them because we're not taught that there's another way to think, there's another way to be. So, how do you start now consoling friends and family members who have yet to understand that a big portion of their life experiences is something that they drew upon themselves unconsciously if they're not awake?
Well, you know, there's a saying in recovery is that sometimes you have to detach with love, you know, and you
Mhm.
have to wait for that person to become willing to want to change. But most of it is, you know, why are they stuck? Why are they believing that stuff? And what I do with the energy work, and also as a metaphysician, you know, as I look at the whole picture, what can I do to help them? And as I said, sometimes you can't, but you can put the life raft out there for them. You can give them suggestions, you know. And what happens is that those suggestions really trigger something inside them. Yes, I want that. Or they might look at something and it's like, how did you do that? You know, and then they keep coming back because that frequency that you give off with your divineness attracts them. Their soul knows. And that's the attraction that comes. So that's where it's like the people, a lot of the people that come to me are, you know, people that have been stuck in the past or through referrals or realizing that there's more to life than what we've been taught. And so they want to explore it. So that's where my healing modalities come into play,
Mhm.
where what made you stuck in the first place, you know. And a lot of it is the, you know, low self-esteem, low self-confidence, being judged, you know. And the biggest thing is fear, the
Yeah.
fear that if I do this, this is what's going to happen. And that's where the traditions come into play, you know, and our programming comes into play. So
Yeah.
there's many aspects to it. So that was a big question, but it's like first you got to meet them on their terms, and you can't force anybody, but they're attracted to you. It's the
Yeah.
attraction. That's the vibrational attraction in metaphysics. You know that we're all one, and we're here to help each other. So I love the metaphysical part, the esoteric part, the frequency part, and the perspective. It's like, okay, if you keep doing what you always did, you're going to get what you always got.
Yeah.
So if you want to change, you have to you have to do something. You got to take the action. And
Yes.
and that's how my practice came about was I had to take the action. And I've
Yes.
been there, done that. And that's the emotional connection. I can help you only if you want help. If you don't want help, I can't help you.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. It's such an important thing that you mentioned, especially taking action for wanting the healing to come into your space, being receptive to it, and at the same time, even allowing oneself to be vulnerable. I think it's such an important aspect of the healing. But like you mentioned earlier, people are normally in the space where they have low self esteem and they don't exercise their dominion over the situation. And one of the things that I noticed as well, Reverend Sheila, in my metaphysical practice, one of the things where people's heads get so wrapped up to is the situation where they feel so ashamed.
Oh,
It's one of the biggest blocks that
absolutely.
We'll be back shortly. This is Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila. Are you ready to explore a new kind of music? Yung bang kakaiba na hindi mo pa napapakinggan? Mga bagong artist. Nagugulat sa inyo sa kanilang awit at tugtugan. Discover them, hear them in Napalm Hour. Ang Napalm ay ang new all-Pinoy alternative music source na para sa kakaibang musika. Alternative artists and bands all the time. Catch them at Napalm Hour. Mondays through Fridays, 12 noon to 1 p.m. and 8 to 9 p.m. Streaming live on V81 Radio mobile app. Kaya i-download mo na for free. Now na! Coming soon on Napalm Season 3. If you rock with them, we're gonna roll them. Get ready for Napalm Music Awards because your new all-Pinoy alternative music source is about to bring the house down. Abangan at tumutok lang tuwing Sunday, 1 p.m. dito sa Napalm para sa mga updates. Dito lang yan sa V81 Radio, Manila. Now back to Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Satnam, everyone. I am Reverend Reg, and I'm very excited. You know, this is such an amazing, amazing topic that we're talking about. We're talking about shame and vulnerability. And one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is because personally for me, when I have made a series of decisions that wouldn't look so glorious from my part, you know, it stopped. Keep that feeling collected, feeling that you have to keep pressing forward, especially, for example, now, Reverend Sheila, I just got into my career the last 2 years of being on public, being an anchor for a show. So I know that a lot of my personal issues, considering that we're talking about life coaching and metaphysics, it has to become part of the discussions of the show. So a lot of the discussions there will have to put me at risk, especially we're talking about shame and guilt. Especially, I want to share something where I felt most vulnerable in the past, and it was me about being gay and talking about sex in public, where they're coming from a very Catholic traditional community. So shame was such a big thing for me in the past, and I didn't realize it was blocking me. What would you suggest to people as practical things that they can actually apply in their own lives to take themselves into the space where they can start taking action and overcome feeling shameful and feeling vulnerable?
Well, first of all, you need, as we said before, you need to take action. And there's different avenues, you know, and what I specialize in is taking a look at the reasons for their shame. And I deal with quantum energy, all right? And I deal with divine energy. And my healing modalities help me get into the cellular level, meaning more the DNA and the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual levels. What is the blockages? What caused the shame in the first place? You know, and that really helps people to understand that there's more to it. My own story of shame, of coming from an alcoholic home, all right, and then being in a marriage that behind closed doors, it looked like we had everything. But, you know, I mean, on the outside of the doors, it looked like from the outside, but the inside, things are totally different. And that's how my childhood was, you know, you keep all the pain inside, you know, and then finally as we grow forward, if people realize if they don't take the risk and be vulnerable to take the risk, nothing changes and you are just unhappy. And so what's the purpose of us being here? You know, it's to be happy. And so you have to take the risk. You have to be vulnerable, and then you have to, do something about it. And I was very fortunate is because, God led me in the right path as far as put people before me to take a look at myself, and then gave me the tools to say, okay, I'm angry. Why am I angry? I'm resentful. Why am I resentful? And to take a look at that. And the healing modalities that I do has that. And, people start to go they get very stressful, so
Yeah.
you can deal with the stress and the trauma. Most of it is a trauma, what's inside, expectations of other people that causes, the things in you. And that's where the shame comes too, is that you don't want to disappoint anybody. They
Yes.
expect you to be a certain way. So, you have to tie the line. You got to, walk the walk the way they want to. And if you don't go off that path, shame on you, type thing. It's like, that's not living your truth, spiritual truth, and being in line with who you really are. It is living your life for somebody else. So, people don't want to face the shame. They don't want to be vulnerable because they don't want to get hurt. However, it comes to a point, especially now, that we can take a look at that. And I'm very grateful because I can help people take a look of those layers of shame, those layers of guilt, and those layers of, okay, I'm not that person, and I'm not going to be that person. So I have to find out who I am. And that's a discovery.
Yeah.
It's
Thank you for
discovery.
sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And something that I want to add to what we're talking
You froze.
purpose in life is to be happy, but for some people, the purpose in life is to cleanse your soul in this earth plane. So another mindset that I learned while I was growing up: if you're sick, they would say, offer your sickness to the rest of the world who are suffering, so that, things like that. Naturally, if you were brought up with that kind of mindset, you would want to get sick because you're thinking now that your sickness is an offering.
Yeah. Suffering is where it's at, right? Suffering makes
Yeah.
you holy. Like, I don't know about that. Well, it's as I say, it's traditions and what they were brought up with. Society. That's that's the linear thinking in us. That's what we have
Yeah.
to follow. That we have to follow that type of thinking. It's like, and then as we start to awaken, it's like, that doesn't kind of work right. Why would I want to be sick all the time?
Yeah. So you could just imagine, Reverend Sheila, I talk to a lot of patients, especially if they have something like the big C, for example. And now, without them having to look into their own issues, their honorable excuse would be, I'm offering it to God, I'm offering it to the rest of the world so that the sins of the rest of the world will be uplifted.
Yeah,
And
so
we
they
know
become
from the,
martyr. They
yeah,
become martyr,
and-
right?
yeah.
That's holy. Being a martyr is holy.
Of course, the two of us are laughing about it, but we know that it's something that people actually have real conversations like that. So they don't want to heal because of conversations like that they have in their heads.
Exactly. And something that was put in there that they deserve it, so they should be
Yes.
sick. And that's the unworthiness. That's where the shame comes in, that they don't feel that they're worthy to have that happiness or to be healthy, And if they look at, if they look at sickness as is like their a gift to the world,
Yeah.
to get sick so you can give it away. It's like, that doesn't really make sense, does it? Well, we know it now, but in our mindsets as children, just like, the mindset is that I could have a guardian angel, but I couldn't have my own angel. It's like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense. And being sick is okay, but being healthy is not. It's like,
Yeah.
the duality.
Yes, and I want to add to what we're talking about because this is an actual experience. I also work with people who are HIV patients, and of course, from their belief system, coming from their religious upbringing, where they were taught that if you are LGBTQ and you have relations with the same sex, and if you get sick with HIV, it's because God is punishing you. So I'm bringing that up. I know it's a shocking statement for a lot of
No.
people, especially people who are traditional in their thinking. So I'm bringing it up because I know that it's difficult for someone to heal with HIV until they get to the root cause of forgiving themselves and realizing they are in total in alignment with God, and that God doesn't want them to get punished. And really, honestly, Reverend Sheila, many years ago, I also believed it. I thought that because I was gay, I was going to go to some geographical hell where the place was. Now I'm able to laugh at it, but in the past it really disturbed me that I was gonna go to hell because of me being gay.
Absolutely. I totally get it. You know, years ago, I was very in the mindset, very Christian mindset, you know, about gays and being straight and homosexuality and bisexuality. And it's like I didn't realize, you know, how judgmental I was being. And that's not very Christian when you can't love somebody and it's like not loving somebody because they have a different book cover, you know, and
Yeah.
that's really not what God wants. And I was able to see through that. That's what I knew in my soul that that's not right. However, I was living a role that was placed upon me, and I couldn't deviate from that role, you know. And matter of fact, I had some gay members in my family, and at one time it was like, oh my gosh, you know, and and it's like, but I was following the traditions of my mother and what she was taught. And then finally, when I realized, you know, it's not right. That's not what Jesus wanted us to do. You know, Jesus loved everybody, you know,
Mhm.
and sexual preference should have nothing to do with your soul. And you know, it is experience that you walk in this lifetime, but it's not something that should be bad, you know, and it's about the duality again. When we talk about duality, you know, good and bad, what's good and bad, and our different perspective on that now in this new, you know, consciousness or a way that we have transformed into a different perspective, you know,
Yeah.
metaphysically we can look at things differently. So but there's a lot of people that still live in that, you know, the judgment and the guilt, and until they let go of their own, you know, feel that they should be forgiven, you know, to forgive themselves first, you know, and of other people's beliefs, and to just love themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And I'm happy that we're both coming to terms with that issue because I loved it that you brought it up, that for a time you also had a different perspective about the LGBTQ. And I'm also happy like this, you know how I also don't want to be that resentful LGBT telling other people that I remember in the past because it comes up every now and then with LGBTQ discussions.
Oh yeah.
Especially, I want it to be a more liberating, more love filled experience for the next generation. And my friend, Nadine Benjamin, and I, who's also a talk show host for Safe at Home sessions, we were talking about this, and both of us were saying, honestly, if we can skip a day not having to talk about this, it would be fine with us. But it's just that we know that we have to bring it up because there are other teenagers who are still coming to terms with themselves, and even parents of those teenagers who want to know where they want to stand and all these things. Especially for a time, another thing that I had to deal with was I am less holy because I'm gay, and that I have to perform uh, above and beyond everyone's expectations because my being gay has to compensate for me not being straight. So people will just notice my output, my talents, instead of my identity. I
Exactly.
wouldn't. Yeah, and we always felt that we felt second rate because even if that I think a couple of years ago, so it felt like it was a compromise more than that feeling that we are just equal to everybody else who felt differently towards the opposite sex. So these things that we're talking about, we think that these are simple things that happens to your psyche or your conversations in your head, but it actually takes a toll on your energy. And instead of focusing on the things that are more important in a day,
Exactly.
it eats you up, and a lot of those things you don't realize. For our audience, it gets your energy stuck. And that's why I'm happy that Reverend Sheila is here tonight with us, because if you want to work with her, I'm very sure that you can actually go to that space where you can experience more wholeness and well-being. Especially, she's leading the Lemurian Sisterhood, where from my previous conversation with her, it helps us balance our yang energy and our yin energy, and really understand what the sacred feminine is all about. So, Reverend Sheila, please educate us. What is the sacred feminine, and why is it important for us to tune into that energy?
Okay. Well, it is about balance, the feminine and the masculine balance, our roles as divine feminine. And what does that mean? And a lot of it, the Lemurian sisterhood and tapping into divineness is about remembering who you really are. The spiritual things that you were taught in our first actual lifetime as humans from Lemuria. And what does that mean? It's about where we came from, and where we need to be now, and what does that mean in our life. And for the sisterhood, there's many women and men who become
Mhm.
awakened, and they want to know what their role is. So the Lemurian sisterhood is very divine, meaning you go within and you accept yourself, and then you use that actual divineness to be your soul's purpose, understanding the spiritual aspects to it. Rev, when you were talking about, judgment and stuff like that, and I, I don't like labels, and I can totally relate when you talked about, being gay and the
Mhm.
community. And I had to deal with my alcoholism, and I
Mhm.
had to deal with actual people calling me an alcoholic. That actual phrase, being alcoholic, was so shameful. My parents are alcoholics, and I was not like them. But it wasn't about alcoholism. It was about the shame that went with it and the reasons why I drank. I
Mhm.
didn't drink
Mhm.
like they, but I ended up being an alcoholic. And the word alcoholic is so shameful. It's less than. Just like, being gay is less than. It's like, wait a minute, no. And what I learned in all the recovery programs that I've been through myself years ago is that it's just a symptom. It's not the cause. All right. So
Yes.
if you talk about being a gambler or sexaholics or shopaholics, that's okay, because that's not shameful. Everybody has those problems. Well, guess what? Everybody has those problems, right? It's like,
Yeah.
why is it signaled out? It's like, so they take the focus off themselves and they can place it on another person. And so it's like, wait a minute, that should not define you. It is about who you are as a person inside and how you live your life, not your sexuality, not that
Yeah.
you drink too much or whatever. If you got a problem with it, of course you want to deal with it. But it's like, that's not the problem. There isn't
Yes.
a problem being who you are. That's your divineness. You know, the key is using your divineness to help and to live your life in being in alignment with your soul's purpose. Accept yourself. Let go of the anger and the resentments and everything that brought you to this part, and just put the joy out there and live life to the fullest, helping whoever you can, most of all yourself. You're joyful, happy with yourself, whether anybody else is happy with you or not. The thing is that you're happy with yourself, and then it resonates out. All right. That's where you help people, and being real and not hiding behind names
Yes.
or doors or trying to be somebody who you're not. Believe me, I lived it. I lived it for 36 years. My marriage, 32, and the relationship 4 years before that. So 36 Look at the dichotomy there. 36 years living that life, and 36 years ago is finally when I started the transformation. Look at
Yes.
those numbers. So, it's all about transforming, and living your divine purpose, who you are, and letting go of those blockages. The
Yes.
blockages are, the resentment and the anger and, what ifs, and it's the self-confidence. How did that happen? And a lot of it is from our past and what we were taught in tradition and society. Society
Yeah.
put that on us, but God, loves us whoever we are, and whatever we do, even the person that does really harmful things to other people, they're still loved, but it's also something they are experiencing as a human in this life, and most of society understands about reincarnation, that we have many lives, and I am just so grateful that
Mhm.
I can relate to people, and that I've been there, done that, the emotional intimacy, I've been there. I can talk about it because I've been there and back. And that's the whole part about, touching the soul. And that's really God talking through us. And that's where the angels come in, knowing that you had support and they're there, and just like helping other people, I can relate to them because I've been there. I've done that. And I can see past that. Let's go beyond that. Let's not stay in that victim role. Let's move past that.
Yes. I think, Reverend Sheila, one of the things that people deal with having with that victim role is not realizing that they have spiritual tools. Like, for instance, for my life, that if I had a better narrative of my own life and my own and putting myself ideal into an actual experience, being able to move from the person I am with my habits right now and moving towards my ideal self where my full potential is there. One of the things that I learned in metaphysics is learning how to have healthier self-talk is so important to change the way I'm using my energy and to change the way I'm experiencing my life. Has a lot to do with breaking my limits. And I want to ask you more about it, Reverend Sheila. And for now, we'll pause for a short commercial.
We'll be back shortly. This is Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila. Pagpatak ng 7, dapat lahat nakatutok sa amin. Catch these programs at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. Talk Shop Asia Global, USA Edition, with Rolly Pagaspas and Rosario Cahucum Brad Perry. Home Not Alone, Sounds from Home, with Papa Gio. And Freedom in Christ, with Felsen. It's all about entrepreneurship, entertainment, and enlightenment. Back-to-back-to-back programs at 7. LA at 7. LA at 7. Exclusively on V81 Radio, Los Angeles. Kabayan, nanguhomesick ka ba? I-download na ang aming mobile app at mag-enjoy sa mga kantang Tatak Pinoy and feel like you're home. The V81 Radio mobile app, available in the App Store and Google Play Store. V81 Radio mobile app, free now, free forever. Now back to Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila.
Satnam, everyone. I am Reverend Reg, and today we're talking about changing our lives, healing ourselves. And earlier, before we paused for a commercial, I was telling Reverend Sheila that the way we have our inner dialogue and the narrative that we have of our lives is actually something that can keep us in the space where we are experiencing whatever is happening in our present circumstances. And we can also use the power of our voice, the power of our words, and create a brand new narrative for ourselves so that we can move from the person we are right now and move to our self ideal, where is our true selves living from our full potential. So, Reverend Sheila, I know that you have a lot to share about changing the stories we tell ourselves so that we can actually move from our limitations to that place of expansion, that place of joy and more fulfillment.
Exactly. The limitations that we place on ourselves is huge, and what I always say to go within and listen to those voices within. And it's about your thoughts. Thoughts are energy that you put out there, and that's the thoughts into the consciousness field. So a lot of people, they have limiting beliefs and they have the negative talk in their head the whole time. So the first thing I talk about is listen to the way you talk.
Mm.
What are you putting out there into the field? Your reality, is like you are, and what you say is your reality. So change your reality, change your perspective. And the first thing I talk about is the way they talk and what is coming out of your mouth. And as soon as you hear the negativity, oh, I should, or the ego part, but I meaning, you're put down, and it's like it's negative instead of positive. So whenever you hear yourself think negative, always
Mm.
remember, say shift. I always say to say shift. And that's kind of like very close to SHIT, shift. And so whenever you think of or hear yourself with a negative thought or a negative comment, say in your brain or out loud, shift, 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 because that will bring to your forefront your memory is like, oh boy, I'm shitting on myself. In other words,
Yeah.
the shoulda, wouldas, and couldas, that is a negative thought that you have. And that is trained and learned inside you. So you have to, take the action and stop limiting yourself with your thoughts and start saying, okay, I'm going to shift into a positive thought or a positive vibrational talking to myself and talking to other people. So it's all about frequency. It's all about the energy around you, And so, of course, when we talk about metaphysics, that comes into play in a lot of different things. But you will shape reality by the things that you do and you say, and you can change it, but it's being aware of it. So I kind of bring people to the awareness of the way that they're thinking and saying. Let's
Yeah.
take a look at that, is because if you keep thinking that, that's what you're going to do. It's
Yeah.
like you got to change the behaviors, and a lot of people don't realize that their behaviors is what's happening here and what you've been taught, your belief system. So let's back it up and take a look at that and keep it
Yes.
very simple. It's all about thoughts and, how you react to things, why you react to things. And what I say is just keep it very simple. Just breathe, slow down and breathe and feel inside. Feel
Yes.
your kindness inside.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. I'm really having fun that we're discussing this. And especially, we're talking about things that most of us will not have in a regular conversation over coffee with friends who aren't really in the space where they want to grow themselves. And most people actually get caught up in the drama of, people saying, but it's your fault. It started like this when you failed to meet certain expectations. It's your fault. And then it goes back to that loop of thinking and conversation, and it doesn't really help anyone, which is very contrary to my experience, especially when I decided to move out of our family home. And my neighbors are healers themselves. And whenever we have a dialogue and things don't pan out the way we envisioned it to be, we would have conversations asking each other, what is it about me that attracted this? This is also a lesson to me. So I know that having that kind of conversation allows for a more graceful evolution with everyone holding the space that way, because we're no longer acting on guilt and shame patterns. And we're constantly asking ourselves, what is it about me that attracted this? What is it about me that's growing out of this experience? And what is the root cause of, I realize that when you're surrounded by people who think that way, it puts you in a very different space where you're transforming your life, because you now begin to see how you're going to expand and flow in the experience. And now that we have a global concern in health, in our health matters, in our political matters, in our financial concerns, a lot of people are going through that space where guilt and shame is so, and guilt tripping towards each other is very big
Mm,
and
mm.
very adamant. So for people who have more awareness, what do you think can they do to soften the situation for others who are not yet in the space where they're totally accepting responsibility for their contribution to what's happening? Because we know that even if they don't take responsibility for it, it does affect the collective, it does affect the community. So, what do you recommend, Reverend Sheila, that we do? Especially, we know that we have more awareness about the its effects on the environment.
Put compassion out there into the environment. It's
Mhm.
compassion. First of all, everybody has love, and compassion is very important, especially in today with the COVID and everything else that's going on. And people are living in that fear, and they don't know any different. So what you can do is put compassion out there. The problem is that a lot of times you can't talk with people about that.
Yeah,
However, you can do it inside. You can breathe in the compassion in your heart, coming from your heart center, and breathe out, because that is in the vibrational field of you. And the same with the drama, you know, don't get in the middle of the drama. And that's where the fear comes in, especially with what's going on today, where we're going with this COVID. And then also in the future, people are so mindset and believing what they want to believe, because that's what they've been, I want to say brainwashed, but that's what they've been taught to believe. That's what the media is showing you, whatever. So it must be, instead of going inside and say, let's take a look at this. And that's with anything. What we can do is send the compassion out to them, because they don't know what they don't know. But you don't have to beat them up for it. You can just be an example and put that frequency of love out there. And where does the love come from? It really comes from your divine source inside, your God inside, whatever it is. So compassion is what we can
yeah,
do. Is put compassion out to humanity right now. And to know that we're going to be okay. That we need to go through this to build it back up, to be able to be stronger and better. And that's exactly what God wants us to do, is to be bigger and better and to build upon it. And don't we all, when somebody just completely out and about, just completely flat, they have to hit the complete bottom before they're willing to go up. But what's nice now is that there's many of us out there that are showing the way in a very gentle way, and it's very practical way. All right. So just send the loving and compassion out there into the vibrational field. And because the energy is different now, they're feeling it. That's where the energy part comes into play. They're feeling it, and that's attractive to them. You know, and they might argue with you, because that's their own inner turmoil. Is because that kind of makes them look at themselves. But
yeah.
reality, they will feel the love coming from you. That it's really about compassion.
Yes.
It's
Reverend Sheila, thank you for sharing that. And something that I've experienced for myself, for example, in my own family, metaphysical talk is something that most of us in the family would think that it's luxury for the rich. The reason why rich people go into metaphysics is because they have money to, they have the time and money to actually work on themselves and deal with those existential topics. But, in my own experience, especially, I've gone through this for many, many years. I know that it's a necessity. So one of the things that was a tough decision for me, I know I had to be compassionate towards myself, and I know I had to grow for my own sake, because I cannot be a force that can help the rest of my family members evolve if I'm not evolving myself. So one of the tough decisions that I had to do was to move out, which is not a norm here. And at the same time, begin to realize that, hey, like what you mentioned earlier, you know what, you have to go through something like this in order for us to build something back up collectively. But in my personal experience, I left so that I can build myself up, understand my own authentic self, and then stand in that power, and then accept that whatever will flow out of that decision will flow. And for me to have enough compassion towards myself and strength. Yes, and I know that I needed myself to be strong enough to endure the transformation process and have enough compassion to accept that when I don't always make the best decisions as I am transforming, I need to be kinder and more considerate to myself as I am going through it. So, and the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I get a lot of viewers who tell me about their own limitations, and they tell me it's easy for you to say because you don't live with your family. You don't have to deal with certain conversations that will trigger you. But what most people don't realize, I also had to go through that space where I had to put myself in a space where I needed to gather a lot of courage to be able to do it, and to actually decide that I was going to heal, especially in energy healing terms, which isn't really a common practice for most of us. So I want to ask you, Reverend Sheila, what would you advise the young ones? Especially, I know that in order for you to be compassionate towards others, it doesn't really mean that you're going to postpone your own personal growth and transformation, because other people think that in order for you to be compassionate towards others, you have to put your life on hold for the sake of other people. Uh, for the sake of other people, what can you say about it?
Well, that's what I did for many years. You know, I stayed in the relationship for my children instead of looking and knowing that I need to do something. That's called, you know, sometimes it's called codependency, but also it's martyrism. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I got my allergies.
Mm.
A martyr, and that's why with me is that it took so long before I finally moved out of the relationship and started living my truth. It's hard. It's very hard, but it's so rewarding when you look back, you know, and it's so rewarding when you finally realize that you had the power the whole time. It's just that you had to step into your divineness. You had to take the action to do it. And many people, you know, it's hard to get there. So it's transforming. The transforming part is huge, but it's so worth it. And that's when you find the peace inside. And then you can have compassion for the things that you didn't do right. You know,
Yeah.
I did the best I could with what I had, and forgive yourself for your own thinking of limitations or your own thinking of you didn't do it right, and accept that. Accept it. You know, you might not like it, but you can accept it, and then you can move on. You know, and just like being a better person, you know, look at things differently through different glasses. You
Yeah.
know, you have different glasses on when you grow. All right, and you can look at things prospectively, and that's why, you know, we always say, you know, the older I become, the less I know, or the older I become, the wiser my parents become. And
Mm.
that's a good one too. It's like, even though my parents had their situation, when I
Mm.
look back at it now, I don't go into the woe is me victim role. I go into the beautiful lessons I learned from it. And that's
Yeah.
the same with life now. Take the lessons, learn from it, and grow from it. You know, and some people you can't, you know, and then that's okay. But you planted a seed. All right.
Yes.
They will remember, because that's what I remember, the things that people were there for me when I was stuck in my limitations, when I was stuck and say, you don't understand me, you know, or I don't want anything to do with you, you know, and that's the growth part.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. And in a way, honestly, when I moved out, and then, of course, you recall all the things that you're grateful for in the process of transforming. One of the things that I'm most grateful for, and what I appreciate most about my siblings and my mom, is them, I know, doing their best because I can really feel it that they're doing their best to understand me.
Yeah.
So maybe they're not able to articulate themselves that they care for me in such a way that I would feel it according to my terms, or what I think is an acceptable description. But the small things that they're doing, for example, when I came out to my mom, instead of her getting mad at me because I was so scared she was gonna get mad at me, I immediately had this reaction. You know, mom, if you're gonna yell at me or you're gonna get mad at me, you better do it now. I don't like prolonging the agony. So, but you see, that was me trying to be brave enough to hold things together while I'm putting myself in a vulnerable space.
Yeah.
But I know that she was doing her best because after that conversation, she went out to buy something and then brought me one of my favorite cakes. And I know that maybe she may not have the words, but she was really reaching out to me in her own caring way. And those things I really appreciate about my family members because I know as much as they're trying to settle into that idea, they have their own love language. And for that, I truly appreciate them. So I think, Reverend Sheila, I really want to have you again for another episode because what we're doing now, it touches the family relationships on so many levels.
Yeah.
And it's so important for us to discuss these things because if you don't understand the dynamics of your relationship with yourself and how you're going to operate in a family environment, it's even harder to be in a long term committed relationship, whether you're gay or straight. And then you're going to tell yourself you want to have a family.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, anyway, Reverend Sheila, one of the things that I also want to ask you about, of course, it took you 36 years of, transformation before you settle in, like you said, to that profound, more settled version of yourself you are, to that authentic version of yourself. And like you mentioned, you're still evolving. So now that you're in that space, Reverend Sheila, I want to ask you,
You froze.
and now that you're in that space, Reverend Sheila, I want to ask you, don't you feel that you want to be with someone again, in terms of getting married? Or you're just so happy right now with the community?
Okay. So about that subject, a lot of people say, "Oh my gosh, you got so much to offer. Why aren't you with somebody? Something must be wrong." And what I say, well, nothing's wrong. He just hasn't come yet. A lot of people say, "Well, you're being too picky." I said, "No, he just hasn't come yet. He hasn't." And it's like when it's the right time, the divine time, And yes, I would love to be in a relationship with somebody, but at this time, God has me working, doing what I'm doing, but there's so much more out there, and it's coming. Maybe
Yeah.
not in this lifetime, but it's coming.
But I want
But
to
it's
ask you now,
okay.
Reverend Sheila,
It's okay.
uh,
It's okay.
would you, are you also in that space? Let's say your former partner evolved. Are you open to the idea of getting back with a former partner?
No, not at all. And the reason is that we have grown and realized that we are happier apart. It's like
Mm.
God said, you don't, marry somebody that you're unyoked with, and we were unyoked, because we were just two totally different people. And as I said, I was trying to be who he wanted me to be, and I
Yeah.
couldn't live up to his expectations. And now he is happier. He's with somebody that's just like him. So
Amazing.
when we go forward and when we look at it, the whole situation, it's like, it had to happen for us both to be happy,
Yeah.
and I'm happy being not in a relationship. I'm happy with just being with myself,
Yeah.
and I know he's happier because he is living his divine truth. It's not my divine truth, and he chooses to live that way. which is who he is. And that's where I accept him, and I have compassion for him and I have respect for him because he's living his life the way he is to be. And many years it was really hard, a lot of the resentment and the anger that I had, first of all, for myself, for staying for so long, but also not being able to get out of it, but also anger towards him for not accepting me for the way I was. And then when I finally turned it around and started having compassion and forgiveness for myself, then I could give it to somebody else. And now, it's comfortable. He's comfortable where he's at, and I'm comfortable where I'm at, wherever God leads me.
Yeah, such a beautiful.
No, I have no desire to go back because I'm not that person.
Yeah.
I'm not that person anymore, and he's not either.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. I want to ask you, do you think it would have worked out if you had acceptance of the kind of person that you wanted to be?
No, I don't think so at all. I believe that we were together, to produce wonderful children, and to continue. I know what my purpose is, but I also know that my script in life, my contract, as they say, you come in with a contract, and you meet certain people, and this is your life. That contract is written in invisible ink. As you transform and you evolve, and even though you might have a partner that was with you and you figured that was going to be to the end, you're transforming, and it's okay to move on. And because you learn that lesson in that relationship, it's about growing in our spirituality and who we really are supposed to be, our true purpose. And when we live our purpose through other people's eyes, that can make us very unhappy. So you really need to look at what your purpose is. What is your potential? And a lot of people don't know how to find that. That's why they stay stuck. But our divine purpose, what are we here for?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Sheila. I love this conversation, and I trust to have you again for another episode of Practical Magic. I know so many families are benefiting, especially for people who are just into that space where they've decided to pursue personal growth. And I applaud you, and I applaud our audience who are watching. We're actually doing it because it's not an easy path. And at the same time, Reverend Sheila, I want to ask you, what's that one practical magic tip that you want to leave with me and the rest of our viewers?
I always talk about it's breathing. Just breathe, go within, and listen to the voice within, because that's your God connection. And that's
Fantastic.
The power that you have. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Reverend Sheila. And now, Ralph, thank you for Michael. Please flash the AOB.
Thank you.
Yes. First, I want to thank Unity Philippine Spiritual Center, Benedictine International School for allowing me to use their facilities in the beginning of Practical Magic. And next, please. We also want to thank the International Metaphysical Ministry, University of Sedona, and University of Metaphysics, where I met Reverend Sheila. And Reverend Sheila, can you please tell us a brief experience about the university education?
I love Dr. Masters and how I related with his connection with the divine. And as soon as I found out about the University of Metaphysics, I said, I'm home. I've found my tribe. Thank you, God, for leading me to the University of Metaphysics, because I found out who I really was, and I was a divine soul. I love it.
So beautiful. And the next one, please. And we also encourage everyone to check the university website. There's a doctoral program, and if you want to pay it in full, it's only $990 for Filipinos who are working abroad. And if you have nephews, nieces, children you want to send to college, I highly suggest that you check the University of Metaphysics website, because even if you're on a budget, you only pay $90 down for the initial payment and $25 for 48 months for the succeeding installment. And next one, please. And of course, I want to thank Dr. Anita Caprice, Dr. Diana Bihuni, Dr. Cindy Palos, my brother Anthony Benton Brown, of course, Andrew, Dr. Yolanda Dukes, Jennifer Hill, Reverend Adam Hayden, Dr. Stephen Casmaina, Dr. Kathleen Riley, Reverend Tina Brinkley Potts, and of course, next one, please, Arnel Caranto, and of course, Reverend Sheila. Please tell us more about your work and where our viewers can find you.
Absolutely. So my website is SheilaTillich.com, SheilaTillich. And you can find me also on Facebook, Sheila B. Healing. That is my Facebook page. And also the Lemurian Sisterhood, Western New York on Facebook. So I'm all over the place there. And I love doing what I do. And I also have a Lightworkers group where people from all over the world who are starting to light up and help humanity. So I have a group founder of the Lightworkers Connection Circle, and you can actually find all that on my website, SheilaTillich.com.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much, Reverend Sheila. I had so much fun. You know, I always feel my heart warm up whenever we're having these conversations because I know that both of us are talking about real life experiences and how both of us actually want to rise above whatever limitations we had in the past so that it can also benefit others. So thank you so much for sharing more of your authentic self and your heart energy because like what you mentioned earlier, compassion is very much needed nowadays. So thank you for sharing that. And at the same time, I want to thank Michael, Harty, our staff in V81 Radio, Tet, my co-producer, Sir Rolly and Sir Charlie. Thank you so much. And before we end the show, I want to encourage everyone to simply close your eyes and just go into the silence within you. Take a deep breath in and out, feeling all that love and gratitude in our hearts. You may touch your heart if you wish. And together, let's affirm the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is and all is well. And so it is. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. And remember, here in Practical Magic, we want to remind you, you are the magic you've been waiting for. Satnam, everyone, and have fun.
Namaste. Thank you.
Consistently delivering the very best in metaphysics. Here in Practical Magic, your practical mystic source. Till next time, only here on V81 Radio, Manila. Tunog Pinoy, Tatak Pinoy, your all hits, all Pinoy digital radio station in South Manila. This is V81 Radio.
Ito ang paborito ng bawat Pilipino. Basta all hits, all Pinoy, panalo. Merong kwentong iyakan at tawanan. Kahit nasaan ka man ito'y mapapakinggan.